You feel this nervousness on the phone there?
Sir, I've been trying to make an urgent phone call up there.
Well, I don't think it's something I want to do on an overseas phone.
You gotta make some phone calls. Hang up the phone. Prank caller. Prank caller.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to Packernet After Dark. This is the call-in show of the Packernet Podcast Network. If you'd like to call in, if you'd like to participate in the show, please feel free to do so. The phone number here is 608-501-0718. New callers go directly to the front of the line. We don't have any new callers today, but we do have a whole bunch of Daniel from California, so why don't we get chipping away at that one?
Hey, Ryan, Daniel from California.
Hey.
I was just listening to the podcast, and you were talking about the draft and how the Packers, they always go for like the developmental guy and all that stuff. And
I'll say it feels that way. I guess, I don't know. Again, it's in some way everybody's a developmental guy. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm not going to say it as like a definitive thing, but it certainly feels that way. And I know there have been times where, they'll draft a guy, and the hard part about it is it's hard to get into it because there's not a lot for me to sink my teeth into. And I guess that would be my definition, which is not the definition, but in terms of, you'd like to see a guy that just dominated college, and then to be able to just say like he's NFL ready or whatever the case may be, as opposed to, like I've said before, Josh Myers, where they took him earlier than it seemed like they should have, and there were other prospects everybody was more excited about. His PFF grades were not very good, and you're just kind of like, I guess there's something that they like, that they think that they could get better out of him. I don't really know, but I don't know that that's, I don't know. I guess it would be something worth trying to look into.
it's not always, it's like falling in love with like the potential, right? And they can like, oh, I can build this guy up mentality, right? And it's just like, what are the Packers do so good at? It's drafting offensive linemen, right? And I wish they had this clarity of seeing it, because they're not good at picking offensive linemen that they're going to develop. What it is they pick good offensive linemen. Like, how many times do we see a guy with elite feet and then like an elite college passing grade, and then we draft him? It's like that's it, right?
Well, yeah, that's a good. Again, I'd have to look a little deeper, but Zach Tom. Why did I like Zach Tom so much? Well, because I went over to SIS and they had their big board up, and they just kind of had all these different categories, total points, pass blocking, whatever. And this guy, Zach Tom, that I'd almost never heard of before, was at the top of like every list. I'm like, who the heck is Zach Tom? So just from then on, I became a big Zach Tom guy. Well, go figure. The guy's a dominant football player in the NFL. Sometimes you just don't have to overthink it,
Like, we don't have to get the giant guy. We don't have to get the small guy. We always get that guy that's like, he's not oversized or undersized. He's always just like some standard, like Zach Tom, 6'4", 300 pounds. I think he was 290 when we drafted him, but he only gave up one sack, like in college his senior year or something like that, right? It was something insane. Like they every other position they draft based on potential, because they want the elite athletic guy, but when it comes to offensive linemen, they draft elite athletic guys that are actually just good. Like, I wish they would just draft slightly athletic guys that were just good football players at other positions. I know it's kind of just doing that blank statement on everything. And, like, Lucas Van Ness is a good example because he's an elite athlete and everything. And he had a pretty solid, I think he was like a redshirt sophomore or a redshirt junior when he came out. But, just having guys that, like, they don't have to be a 9 all the time, right? I know when you hit, like, that guy could be the best in football, but look at somebody like Max Crosby. He's like I think like a 4th or 5th rounder, and he's not some elite athlete. He's just a try-hard guy. So it's like, I don't know. Like, I like having our thresholds to set us up for at least, like, they'll be competitive athletically, but like, I just want good football players, and I know all of us preach to this choir at this point, but I don't know. That's what I want.
Yeah, and even, you could even say, as far as, like, use Christian Watson as an example, you could say, well, that's an example, and, to varying degrees. Some people don't like him as much as I do, but even if you wanted to use that as an example, I mean, you could very easily say that it's not even necessarily, it doesn't have to be that it was because he was an athletic freak. He's a specific type of receiver. Matt LaFleur specifically needed a speed guy, and so you'd have to go that route. So it's, it's not like just some blanket, I just want a guy that checks every box, is a 9.99 in every athletic threshold just for the sake of checking that athletic threshold box, where it isn't really necessary. For Christian Watson, it's 100% necessary because we're specifically looking for this type of a receiver. He fills a very specific role, whereas if he didn't have that speed, he wouldn't be able to serve that role, right? So, I mean, he just checked a necessary box, whereas, Lucas Van Ness, for example, high upside athletic freak, where it's obviously beneficial, not really necessary. Like you said, there are examples of guys that are not super. I mean, Zadarius Smith was a mid-round guy that, he had a really weird path to the NFL, was more or less overlooked and ended up just being a great football player. So, yeah, I think generally speaking, I just like good football players, I understand that they have some thresholds, especially minimum ones. They don't like smaller guys, and that's understandable because we've had some injury issues, and, a lot of times it is with smaller guys. Jair is a smaller guy. Aaron Jones is a smaller guy. Also had injury issues with, like, the big, tall, hyper-athletic guys that their bodies can't seem to be able to hold up to the strain, Eric Stokes and Christian Watson and Kevin King had a bunch of injury issues. So I understand certain things, wanting the bigger size guys and whatnot, but yeah, sometimes there's just good football players out there, man. I mean, Romeo Dobbs, I think, is a good example. I think Jaden Reed is a good example. I think even Dontavian Wicks would be a good example, even though he didn't really show it as much. The bottom line is, despite the lack of athleticism, you just look at what he did on tape, and it's like, this guy's just a good baller, dude. And he showed up, so I'm with you. I mean, I'm always excited about the hyper athletes because, yeah, they can become absolute freaks, and it's pretty cool and all. But, man, good football players are just good football players. I just think sometimes we overthink that a little bit. Obviously, not all the time, because I just listed a bunch of guys that they go out that are just football players. But it also feels like we have more success with the just football player guys as opposed to the 10 RAS players. But again, I'm not speaking with any knowledge. I'm just kind of saying what it feels like sometimes, I think.
And to all the Packer fans that want the big name, or they complain that we don't have any of the Pro Bowl hits, right? Like, can we name a team that, like, they can't do the basic level drafting, but they got the Pro Bowl guys? Can we name what that team looks like? So it's like, I would much rather have, like, the consistent baseline level player than the team that hits only the big name guys, because, like, it's a way better reliable strategy, because that team you're describing is the Jets, right? They hit a couple Pro Bowl guys, right? I think Breece Hall should have been a Pro Bowler, but their team is dysfunctional.
Yeah, I mean, those teams are generally the ones that are terrible at drafting but have top 10 picks every year. And they hit on the top 10 picks and maybe one other guy somewhere else. I mean, look, I'm not going to disparage the blue chippers. I mean, it makes a huge difference for a team. But yeah, what you need is a consistent ability to find guys that can start on a football team. And I think the Packers have that. And I have said I wish that they had a little bit more. But, when you factor in free agency with it, we picked up Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney, and that was fantastic. Edgerrin Cooper seems to be absolutely a blue chip prospect. We never even got a chance to see Jordan Morgan, our first round pick. So who knows what he could end up being. So we're doing okay. I feel like we're kind of on a teetering point here, where I have to kind of put my Gootlickerness aside and say, okay, we're kind of, we're one really bad draft away from saying, Goot, I don't know, dude. But we're also one really good draft away from saying this guy is he still got it. This is a fantastic team, et cetera, et cetera, But we got to see how it all pans out and just keep grinding. But I agree. You have to be consistent with it. It can't just be I got lucky for a year or two and that's what I want. You don't want that because it's going to be a very short-lived thing and then you're done because you can't actually draft. You just get lucky a couple times.
And they just couldn't, he didn't have a good performance. That's just, it's a dumpster fire, right? And you got Garrett Wilson and you got Sauce. Like, that's what elite level drafting, and even Will McDonald, he probably should have been a Pro Bowler. I don't know if he is or not, but look at that. You got your 4 guys, but because they can't do the dirty work between round 2 and round 7, that's why they are a dysfunctional team. And you look at us every year, round 2 to round 7, and our undrafted guys, they're all hits, and they're all contributors. We have an unlimited depth chart of guys that aren't out of the league in 5 years, right? Like I've said this before, the last 3 draft classes, we are probably hitting at least 8 guys in each draft class, which is more draft picks than most teams have, right? Do you want to be that team? Want to be the guy that just hits the Pro Bowl guys? Like I'm okay if we just one season, it's like, hey, let's try to get 1 Pro Bowler. Let's try to get 2 Pro Bowlers. Although last year, Adrian Cooper, if everybody else sucks, I wouldn't want that, but Adrian Cooper is a nice thing because we consistently have good draft classes, but they don't know what they don't know, right? These guys, I'm flabbergasted with, like, the complaints. Enjoy it. Like, we had
You there?
It wasn't what I wanted, but it was a good season. All right. And you hear everybody talk about Jordan, the head coach, and the front office. It's like, this guy, like, they're unshaken. Don't you be shaken. They just got to get better. That's all it is. Go back, go.
Yeah, I mean, this last draft class, I mean, I think it's looked down upon, and I think that's kind of weird considering 2 guys we never got a chance to see because of injury. I know some people view injury as like the same thing as being a bad football player, and I don't understand that. But 2 guys we never even got a chance to see. One of the guys is one of the best linebackers in football as a rookie. We got another guy that is one of the best rookie safeties in the entire NFL. So, I mean, it actually was a pretty solid class. There's also guys like Oladapo that we didn't get to see, not because he's bad, but because there's just no room for him. Tyron Hopper, who I thought actually, I mean, he was a pretty early pick and everything. We never got a chance to see. We'll see how many guys come back. We got, 2 linebackers that are free agents. I think they're both coming back, but if not, maybe Hopper will start getting some opportunities. But we don't know that they're bad. They just never got a chance. Same with Kalen King. Kalen King might end up being a pretty good football player. It's pretty unlikely, but we don't know. I mean, I don't know how many guys do we draft that are just bad. I mean, Bullard is the only guy I think that we drafted that actually had an opportunity to play that really underwhelmed. I don't think anybody else really did, and there's really no reason to be down on anybody else either from that draft class. I mean, obviously they're not all good, but we don't really know. So I thought it was a really solid draft class. Of the few people that actually played, what do we have, 3 guys out there? 2 of them are top of their position. That's a pretty damn good situation to be in. It's just my opinion, I suppose.
Hey, I was listening back because I had a 4-day weekend, so I didn't get a lot of listens in, but you didn't like my response to the Mike McCarthy teams weren't good enough argument, and clarify, because we got phases, right? Because it's Mike McCarthy and Ted, right? We got different timelines here just because of how everything happened. So 2005 to 2007, that's the early McCarthy, Favre, Rodgers rebuild area, and then you get to the 2008 early Rodgers era, right? So far that's 2 eras, where it's 2008 to 2011, early Rodgers, where out of the 3 seasons where they potentially could win a Super Bowl, they won 1 out of 3, right? That 2009 team they came up short, and then 2010 they got it. 2011, that's a misunderstood year by a lot of people because that's the lockout year, right? And you got the two best teams, I think. I'm not sure. This is off memory. I'd have to look at it, but the Patriots have the 31 defense just by yardage, right? Advanced stuff is probably better or worse. I couldn't get access to the DVOAs. I wanted to look up stuff before I called, but it wasn't giving me access to it without signing up for it. But you could help me clarify. But those guys were 31, the Patriots, and then the Packers were 32, and then both, like, just for example, both 11 and 07, they ran into the Giants on historic runs, and they ended up beating the Patriots both times when the Patriots were like, even though I wouldn't agree with 2011, but the 2007 Patriots.
Breaking up pretty bad here, Daniel.
But those teams, like any of those teams in that early era, I'm not saying these teams didn't have the horses, right? Because like they got their 1 out of 3 in that timeline where they were good enough to win, right? So it's like I give McCarthy credit for that. You get back to the next phase, and I'm gonna call back because I'm hitting that 3-minute time right now. I'm gonna call back about phase 2 and then phase 3, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, if we say there was only a 3-year window and they got 1, but I don't really agree with that characterization. I mean, 2012, 13, 14, even 15. I mean, Rodgers played poorly, but so what? They still had enough. And if they didn't have the horses, then what do we have? What do the Packers have this year that McCarthy? I mean, what year did McCarthy have that was worse than what the Packers had this year? With Jordan playing as poorly as he did and being injured, with basically no defensive talent whatsoever. I mean, Rashawn Gary was not playing well. Nobody else really was. Jair didn't play all year. We had no corners. We had one safety. We had a rookie that played pretty well for a while but also was injured. On offense, we had very mediocre wide receivers, a mid-tier tight end, good offensive line, pass-blocking offensive line, good running back. I mean, that just... I don't know what year you could say the Packers this year had it better than the majority of McCarthy's era. I really don't think that that's correct at all.
So, all right, after 2011, you got 2012 to 2014 is kind of like where it's like, I still think they're good enough, right? They just have a couple times when they run into like these big teams, but then after you get this next phase, and this is more what I was talking about, or after like 2015, the teams where like we were taking shots on guys, but we had some really bad corners, and I felt like 15 to 18, we just weren't good enough. But the early phases of McCarthy, right? Because you know it as much as I know it. The best team doesn't always win, right? But those early ones, we got our Super Bowl in that early phase of McCarthy. And yes, the late stage of McCarthy, a lot of those teams were good, but at the very end, because they just weren't good enough with the corners. And I know you already kind of went through it all, and you broke down the stats of how some of those teams, they had really good players like Mike.
Yeah, what corners did we have this year? We didn't have any corners.
Daniels and Hawkland Dix when he was in the early part of his career. But I don't know, dude. Like, it's just like the DNA thing. I just felt like those like secondaries were flawed when you had Quentin Rollins and Demarius Randall, like those, when you watch those guys, it's that late stage Dom Capers too, where it's just schematically they were already behind, right? And yes, I would say Joe Barry he was trying to run the latest and greatest, but I don't know, the Mike Pettin defense, it wasn't as like bad as some of the stuff I felt like we were seeing, because it's just like the Cam Newton thing where he's just like, oh, I know what you guys are doing, right? You meant like that whole thing. That's kind of like the way it felt back then. And I know you don't like hearing that, where it's because you want to be the raw data and statistics, but I don't know, man. Like the last like iteration of the McCarthy stuff, it just never felt like we were good enough. And like early McCarthy, like I give him all the credit, because the 3 years where we had the potential to win the Super Bowl, we did, we got one of them, and then 2014 was one of the times where that season, like we beat the Patriots that year in the regular season, and we melted down.
All right, last one. Here we go.
Sorry, I know I called a lot today. But that 2014, where we're in the NFC Championship, and we all know what happened in that game, right? We have, is it 4 plays that are just really bad when we have enough to close it out, right? Like, I don't want to blame McCarthy for Brandon Bostic, right? Because it's just like, that is an individual thing, and then Clinton Dix on the field goal. Like, I'm not going to blame Mike McCarthy, because Mike McCarthy is not telling him, these guys, to make those individual mistakes. It just, like, that's not a team that didn't show up. That team showed up, and then it took historical, like, fumbles for stuff to not go his way, right? Like, I think my overall point, it took a lot to get here, is that I don't remember Mike McCarthy teams just not showing up. They just couldn't keep up. These Packers teams, sometimes they just don't show up with LaFleur, and I love LaFleur. I don't hate LaFleur, right? The overall DNA, I think that's what it is. It took me a lot of time to process, and there's times where it's just like they couldn't keep up, but there's times in these Packers games they just don't show up, and I think that's what it is. And I know you got frustrated the first time, and you're probably extra frustrated the second time around, but like, because it is DNA, right? And it's just kind of fleshing it out and thinking about it, and it's like, what is it? And it's just like, that's kind of what I'm coming up with. All right, and I know you'll have evidence and stats to kind of back stuff up, and that's why I like having these kind of going over what I talk about, because it really gives me a lot of either am I having the right thought, or am I crazy with this, right? Just because it's really it's refreshing, and it helps me feel like I'm getting better as a Packer fan, because I don't like to be the guy that's just stuff, and I like when you check me, to be honest. So thank you for what you do, Ryan, and don't worry, I'll be around during the off season, and this team's going to get better, and just all we got to do is get better. That's all it is. And I think Goody has the right attitude going forward, and I just want to thank everybody on the Packernet Network for all that they do. Go Pack, go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's your perception of things, I guess. To me, what you described felt a little bit like a distinction without a difference. Just in terms of, they showed up, they couldn't stay up, compared to they didn't show up ever. I don't know. I mean, the bottom line is I think they had all the talent they needed. They got there, and then they weren't a good enough team to win. So they're either just not the best team. In other words, they just weren't good enough teams to win, which it sounds like is your contention, or they were good enough, they just didn't show up enough on that day. I mean, from my perspective, I feel like we've been dealing with a very similar thing every year. these collapses and whatnot. But whatever. It's not a big enough deal to go to war with you on it. It's just a difference in perspective on that, I guess.
Yo, Ryan, it's your uncle, Rico.
Yo.
Hey, I was wanting your thoughts on Mikey Sanderstill. Sainristil?
Mm-hmm.
Sainristil, I believe.
Whatever it is.
Wolverine, Michigan Wolverine.
Yeah.
Washington Commander, rookie, second round, maybe? I don't know. Why? Maybe he is. I just haven't heard his name mentioned. Everybody's Cooper DeJean, that guy. What about Mikey? Why is he not in the conversation for like Rookie of the Year and his accomplishments? I didn't watch all the games played by either one of them, but the games I did watch, I was more impressed with Mikey Sainristil, and he's got some good stats. So, you know anything about that? What are your thoughts? Go Pack, go! For me, currently, Commanders, go Commanders and Bills. I don't know how y'all feel, but I'd like to see the Commanders and Bills in the big show. Alrighty then, go Pack, go! Rico out.
Yeah, I was a pretty big fan of Mr. Sainristil. I forget. You remember how to say their name during the draft, and then you forget. He had a pretty solid rookie season, I guess you could say. It was inconsistent and whatnot, which is, I guess, in some way to be expected. A lot of ups and downs. But starting around week 6 or so, you could argue there's more ups than downs. Maybe not. I don't know. But he had a 67 grade, 66 coverage. He gave up 711 yards, which is kind of a lot. 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 9 pass breakups. So that dude was all over the ball. The 5 touchdowns is rough. But 4 picks and 9 pass breakups is pretty solid. But yeah, very... very up and down. He gave up touchdowns in his first 3 games in a row, so that was a rough start. But then he only gave up 2 more after that, weeks 12 and 13. So he kind of got a little bit better and whatnot. Had 2 picks in that game against Detroit, which is probably what sticks out in your mind. 2 of his 4 came in that game. But yeah, I like Mr. Mikey Sanders still. 5'10", 182, but plays like he's a much bigger corner. So I was a little sad we didn't get him, but that's all right. We'll get our guy. We'll get him. Get him next time. I don't think we took a break yet, so why don't we take a break here, and we'll come back with Nate from La Crosse. I lied. We already heard from Nate from La Crosse, so we got, it says Justin. I don't know if that's right. I don't think it is.
Hey, Ryan. I was just reflecting on draft ages and what age somebody is when we draft them. I remember last year you kind of did a deep dive on what Packers' tendencies are with drafting players, and we have this assumption in our minds that they go for young guys, and you sort of disproved that, which was kind of a bummer for me. And the reason I say that is because I'm a big believer in the idea of picking younger players. Not just because they'll live out, they can have more contracts you can give them, but also just because from the concept of that they're not maxed out. It's like Devontae Wyatt, when he came in, it was like the antithesis to Kenny Clark. If I recall, Kenny Clark came in at like 20 years old.
Very young.
That kid was already playing at a high level in college, and he was not the adult that the other guys they were playing against was. And I guess so part of my idea is that you come into the NFL and there's more for you to project upwards towards. At least that's my assumption. But I might be wrong, and I'm curious if there's a lot of data about, ages and projections for becoming a better football player or not. I would assume that if there was, then the NFL would be all over that, and guys like Kyler Fackrell and Devontae Wyatt would have dropped down even lower than they would. So, just curious your thoughts and if that's a true assumption or not.
Yeah, so there's a good amount of data on that, and you're right. Younger players. The data is pretty clear. I don't know the best way to put it. I don't want to say younger players are better because that's not necessarily the reality. But yeah, I guess the best way you could think about it is, in my mind, by the time you get to college, there's not that big of a difference in a year or two in age, and that's not necessarily true. It's kind of like, imagine you're drafting elementary school kids, and you got one second grader that is like the best player that's there, and it's like first, second, third, fourth grade. One second grader is dominating everybody. But then there's one guy that's even better, and he's a fourth grader. Now, there's nothing wrong with taking the fourth grader. He's the best guy that there is, right? It's kind of like you're drafting for middle school or something. I don't know. The idea being, though, if you're that good as a second grader, you're probably going to be, exceptionally good third grade, fourth grade, and as you get into actually growing into being a middle schooler. So, yeah, I mean, if you're dominating at 19 years old, you're beating 22, 23-year-olds. The idea is, like you said, to project outward, there's more room for you to grow, as opposed to drafting a 25-year-old where you say you're kind of at your peak right now, and so you're probably not going to get much better. I mean, we can coach you technique and all that kind of stuff, but in terms of your athletic ability and all that kind of stuff, you're probably not going to get much better. Now, why didn't guys like Wyatt fall further? Well, they may have fallen. I mean, if he was 19 years old, he may have gone, if he was 19 years old and didn't have any off-the-field stuff, he could have been a top 10 pick for all we know. So I think the NFL is aware of it. Obviously, you can't just pick the youngest players all the time, because there are good players that are older, and there are young players that are not very good. So, you're trying to just take the best players, but yeah, I think everyone's pretty acutely aware of that.
So I've been reflecting on this for a while now, on how this offseason feels kind of shocking how few preferred starters we're losing. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with Jair yet, but as far as guys who are under contract, we're not losing very much.
Right.
It's Josh Myers. I don't even know if you count Eric Stokes, because, he was only in because Jair was out.
Right.
And, with our top three guys, it's probably Nixon, Bullard, and Valentine, right? I don't know where. Anyways, I mean, who else is there? You got McDuffie, I guess. And I guess if we were to lose all those guys, I'm not that bummed. Now, I kind of agree with you that probably the Packers are higher on Josh Myers than we are, but I'd be shocked if they have to pay him very much. Anyways, it kind of reminds me of that year a few years ago when our draft class kind of sucked. The only guy that got picked up from that whole draft class was John Runyon. And that same year, we ended up picking up a ton of guys in free agency with Smith and the two Smith bros and Amos and Billy Turner. And I'm not saying we're going to make a huge splash, but I wonder if that wouldn't be out of the question either. And part of the reason I say that is, yeah, we're getting most of our preferred starters back, but I'm also not like totally excited about every position on the roster either. It kind of feels like, yeah, we've got all our bases covered, but we're really lacking elite players. There's not that many players that I think are at the top of their position on the Packers. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on all that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, we had there was a time not too long ago, I would say, 2020-ish, I think, when I had pointed out how we've got guys that are premier at a lot of positions. Devontae at wide receiver, Rodgers at quarterback, Bakhtiari at, on the offensive line, Jair at corner, Rashawn or whoever it was at edge. We had guys across the board that were just really, really premier, top 5 players. And I do think that that's what we're lacking right now. I like the team. I like that we're building some stuff out. I like that we're, now we've got linebacker, we've got safety, we've got good wide receivers, not great receivers. We got a good tight end. We got a real good offensive line. Hopefully have a really good quarterback. But yeah, we got to start. We got to push a little bit here to try to get some of those premier players like we had not too long ago.
Now, I just correct something I said in the last call. I don't know why I thought John Runyon left the same year as the Smith. I was realizing that was way too soon. But just for context, the draft class that finished their rookie contracts the year that we signed those 4 big names was horrendous. Demarius Randall, Quentin Rollins, Ty Montgomery, Jake Ryan, Brett Hundley, Aaron Ripkowski, Christian Ringo, Kennard Backman. Anyways, we re-signed nobody. And that was the same year we signed a bunch of other people's players coming off rookie contracts. Just want to make that correction.
Yeah, it was a terrible, terrible draft class. And that was, like I said, everybody kind of comes to a point where enough is enough. And I think for Ted Thompson, that was when you looked at it and just said, okay, we got to do something because he just doesn't have it right now. So we had to make that switch. And, again, hopefully we can continue rocking with Gutekunst for a long time. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But, yeah, I'm hoping he can hit a couple home runners here.
Hi, I'm Kyle from Madison.
Hi.
Here with a special offer from the Cosmos directly to you. Do you feel like you don't belong in this world? Would you like to unquestioningly follow every word of an unqualified and stupid influencer? Will you mindlessly cull the herd of sheep in preparation for the arrival of an alien demigod? Do you have $10,000 in disposable income per month? If you answered yes to all these questions, then I have good news. Shrekrakru, the alien overlord, is en route to Earth, and he needs your help. Visit thegodshrekrakru.com for more details. Not a real thing, no connection to Ryan Flip or any of his companies, not valid in Michigan, Kentucky, or any state. Packernet does not endorse the calling of any flock, real or imagined.
That was fantastic. Shrekrakru that's a good one, man. That's got to go down in Packernet lore for sure.
Yo, Ryan, it's your uncle, Rico.
Hey.
Just listening to the podcast, trying to get some shit done, I forget one of us dudes called in and said about a wide receiver one, and you're discussing the wide receiver one, and I don't see how that helps. How does that help? We got a cornerback one. And corner. I said cornerback. In case you thought I said quarterback. We got a cornerback one. I mean, how does that help? It's not helping. I don't see how a wide receiver one helps. How does that help? Tell me how that helps. Besides, it costs the team more and sells more jerseys. Maybe it gets more people to watch the games. I don't know. But other than that, how does it help? Okay. I just need to know this. Rico out.
Yeah, I don't really know. I don't know. I mean, again, I'll take any premier player at any position. I think so the one thing that I think would potentially help is to have some clarity to our offense. We've had so much, like, who the heck is who are we going to build this offense around? Right? Build it around Jordan. No, we're going to build it around the run game. We're going to build it around Jaden Reed. We're going to build it around Watson. And for whatever reason, it just never holds up. Be a lot easier to just have some clarity. This is Jordan. This is Josh Jacobs. This is our wide receiver one. This is Tucker Kraft. And then, it just goes on from there. We kind of have some clarity that way. And so you know what your offense is, you know how your offense operates, and you know what your identity is and how to move forward with each and every game plan. You're not changing it every week to build around this receiver, and then this guy didn't show up, and that guy didn't feel like playing, and that guy got hurt, and everything else. I think the biggest fear that I have is that the biggest thing that I want is for Jordan to get back to playing within structure better, and I don't think a number one wide receiver helps that. I think it potentially hurts that. Now, I know you don't want to overthink it. An elite receiver is going to be a good thing for a team, but it does make me nervous that a guy that's seemingly struggling to just work through the structure of the offense is going to have an opportunity now to just lock into a single guy, and that could be a pretty big drawback, a pretty big negative. So, it is what it is. I'm not going to cry about having an elite receiver on the team. It's just a concern that I have.
Hey, Ryan, Tanner from California.
Hey.
Yeah, I'm just taking it back because I know we got to fill a defensive line coach spot. And just thinking about the value of good coaching.
By the way, I deleted a program that was kind of driving me nuts. I think it did a better job of trying to level out the volume. So if you guys are on speaker or something, if you could try to do me a favor, get a little bit closer to the old microphone, because some of you guys are a little bit harder to hear than others. Hello? Oh, good Lord, I lost him.
The right time
there he is.
to deliver the right message is vital, right? It's just, I just think about some of the best coaches I had, and, like, the ones that actually, like, inspired, to play above your level were, the ones that, good technique, but also had the right message. It just sends me right to Kevin Green and
Them to no longer phone each other.
it sends me right to the Super Bowl where Kevin Green goes, Clay, nobody's stepping up. We got to get this, we got to get this going. Our guys are down, right? It is time. And then Clay goes and does the forced fumble, and just the right, it's the right guy delivering the right message at the right time. And that's what, because you teach technique all, like I think that's, obviously the most important, but also having the right guy, delivering the right message is a lot of what coaching is. Because if you have the right guys in the room, they'll be seeking to get better, and they'll be looking for the technique. And also having that guy who can deliver the message. And I think, like, for example, Campanile and Halfley are the right guys at the right time. We just got to find that defensive lineman, or line coach. So hopefully things go good and we get the right guy. Go Pack, go.
I agree. I'm excited about that, filling that role. Like I said, a lot of really good names that have popped up, and I'm excited to see what we can do with that room. Halfley gave the guy a shot, Rebrovich, to let him stay back. Obviously they had some like mind, but it just obviously was not working out. And Halfley was not impressed with the work that was put in and whatnot. So now he gets to go out and get his own guy and find somebody that's a little bit, more accomplished, I guess you could say. And there are some very accomplished people out there, so I'm hopeful that we'll get that filled soon, and we'll see who that is. But yeah, I'm excited to start making some waves and actually get these guys playing to their full potential, because we need some help there, not just outside but inside. There's only so much you can do as far as getting new people in. These guys got to step up. They got to start playing better for sure. Bill, and then I think we'll get out of here. Bill, what's going on?
All right, so I kind of kept silent for a while. This is Bill at Rock Hill, South Carolina. But this whole Jair Alexander thing has got me thinking. A lot of fans were upset that he was hurt his knee, and they didn't think he was hurt that bad, so they kept wondering why he wasn't coming back into the games. The fact that he had to have surgery makes me wonder that we're talking about a football player that's very sensitive to social media, and he got his feelings hurt, and then he decided, you know what, I'm not going to deal with this anymore. So he's basically asking for the Packers to trade him. So sometimes we got to remember, when we're criticizing football players because they're not playing because they're injured, there may be a real reason why. The problem I have with the organization is they could have just said, hey, he's dealing with a knee injury, and we keep trying to see if surgery's not an option. That's all I have to say. Bye.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the Packers like to play things close to the vest. We know that. They're notorious for that. Even guys like Ian Rappaport and whatnot will tell you it's hard getting information out of Green Bay, Wisconsin. But yeah, I do think sometimes, and I'm sure they're trying to do good by the team and also by the player, just, basically saying, mind your own business. This is something that he's working through, something that we're working through. But it does lead to more rampant speculation, right? What's going on? Is there a problem? Is there this, that, or the other? When they could have just come out and said, look, he's dealing with something serious, and he's fighting real hard to try to come back and play. We're not sure if he's going to be able to or not. He's determined to do so. But we just don't know if he's going to be able to. We're taking it, week by week here, and we're going to give him every opportunity to play. That's what he's fighting for. That's what he's determined to do. And we're going to give him that opportunity, but we don't know, I don't know. Again, they seem to be, Matt LaFleur seems to be more of a need to know, and you don't really need to know anything kind of a coach. And again, I think he has the best intentions in mind, but all that's going to do is lead people to speculate, and then he gets annoyed with the speculation, and it's like, you got to understand, man, we got nothing but speculation. We're coming to you to ask you the question so that you can inform us, and if you're not going to inform us, then we have to make things up. You can't get mad at us when we start speculating. Same with the players. They get all pissy. Oh, you don't even know what you're talking about. Like, well, duh. Of course we don't know what we're talking about. If you'd like to let us know, then let us know. If not, then guess what? Deal with it. The idea that if I don't tell you, you're not allowed to speculate, you're not allowed to have thoughts about the situation, you're just supposed to just completely put it out of your mind, is stupid. That's not how that works. I'm still curious. I'm still concerned. I'm still worried. I'm still trying to figure out what we're going to do moving forward. We're fans of the team. We think about the team. We wonder and speculate. And we'll be doing a lot less speculating the more information you give us. But if you don't give us information, all we have is speculation. And yeah, we're going to make some stuff up, and it might not be very flattering of you. And if you don't want that, then tell us what the hell's going on. I feel like this is a big problem we have, like with the government. That's why there's so many conspiracy theories out there. It's because the government doesn't want to tell us anything. And I think a lot of it is just there's nothing to tell, really. But they're so determined to keep everything a secret for our own protection and for everybody else's protection. And, it's you guys can't handle it and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, but all you're going to, believe me, whatever it is you're protecting, the crap that these people are going to make up is going to be 10 times crazier and 10 times worse, and a lot of people are going to believe it, and this thing is going to spiral rapidly out of control. So maybe just tell us what the hell's going on, please. I know, I get it. Don't need to know, whatever, classified, got it, understood. You're causing problems. Just say it. Just say what's going on. I'm telling you, it's a better thing. It's a better solution right now. It's getting freaking weird out here. People taking videos of balloons flying around saying we got alien UFOs and China's launching rockets at us and stuff. It's like, bro, that's a balloon, man. That is a balloon. My Lord. But more answers will be revealed in due time. We'll see if Jair ends up coming back. It doesn't feel like he's going to based on comments. Obviously, we don't know, and all the comments, the comments are all we have, so even if he does come back, I'm not going to feel bad about feeling like he's leaving. But, I'm sure if and when he leaves, there'll be more things will come out and whatnot, so it'll be what it is, man. It'll be what it is. You guys have a good rest of your night. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye-bye.